I've been teaching Biblical Hebrew for the last 10 years, and one of my goals is to offset traditional readings and analyze the ideologies of interpretation. One of my favorite analyses is this text in Genesis, using feminist lenses to discuss who's hiding after Adam and Eve eat the forbidden fruit. This is the list of my lessons goals before redesigning this class to incorporate generative AI and the frameworks SAM and TPAC and the theories of cell regulation, learning, and self determination theory. And this is a generative AI image that introduces the ambiguity. In this image, Eve is not hiding, but is standing and looking at the viewer of the image. And this is one of the possibilities of the translation of the text that is usually not taken in consideration when you read official translations. So I've been teaching Biblical Hebrew to students enrolled in master's level classes of theology and divinities. And they take the class as requirement for their ordination process in different faith traditions. So this redesign situates Genesis 3:8 within the broader study of Genesis 1 to 3 and focusing on the syntactical ambiguity. And this is the question: did both Adam and Eve hide or only Adam? This is the space then for linguistic, interpretative, and ideological exploration. And the goal with this redesign is to use generative AI as a reflective and collaborative tool that enhances linguistic precision if possible, autonomy, and critical awareness of gendered and interpretative biases. The redesign is grounded in self determination theory, in self regulated learning, and cognitive load theory, and is using the frameworks SARM, TPAC, and PATH. And the redesign emphasizes in this way active meaning making, peer dialogue, and ethical use. So the first step is the human first interaction, where students independently analyze Genesis chapter 3, verse 8 in Hebrew. They are parsing verbs and pronouns and noting ambiguities about the subjects of hiding. In this way, they are attempting to develop their own translations. This initial step is building competence, that is part of the SDT, and forethought, that is part of SRL. The second step is collaborative translation. In this step, they do small groups. The students share translations and justify decisions, and they discuss how translation choices may encode ideological assumptions about gender and agency. During this step, they are strengthened relatedness, which is part of the ASDT, and also peer scaffolding, coming from the zone of proximal development in Vygotsky's constructivist theory. The next one is the generative AI feedback, and in this step, the students are submitting their translations to generative AI, and they are prompting it to do two things. The first is to identify grammatical issues in the student's work, and the second is to offer counter interpretations. The third one is to discuss how one of these translations might reflect cultural and gendered assumptions. In this way, they are working on competence and self monitoring, that is part of the performance phase in the SRL, and they are also reducing strenuous load because they are working together with AI to try to generate all these possibilities of translation in this biblical text. After that, they do a peer AI dialogue. So, in groups, they compare their reasoning with Gen AI's interpretations, and they are evaluating ideological biases in AI outputs. Um, if there is any patriarchal default reading, what are the assumptions about the voice and agency of the characters? In this way, students are critiquing each other's work and AI's output and not deferring to whatever AI is telling them is I don't know the right translation. So in this way, this is a concrete way to integrate generative AI into the lesson because they are using image generation to visualize alternative interpretations of Genesis 3:8. And after students produce and compare their own translations, AI as well generate images that represent these different textual possibilities. Again, the question is Adam and Eve hiding or only Adam while Eve remains visible before God? So students then analyze how the visual interpretations reflect or distort their textual analysis, and they compare these images with traditional interpretations such as the NRSV or the JPS, which are official translations, as well as with historical paintings of the scene. So they go to history, to the visual history, to do this analysis. So the process allows students to see how translation decisions shape theological imagination and to reflect on the implications for patriarchal or women centered interpretations. In this way, they are working on autonomy and reflection from SRL, and they are also building metacognition and ideological awareness. It addresses as well the complexity of cultural influences and facilitates identification of ideological underpinnings. Again, which translation is reflecting patriarchalism and which translations are critiquing patriarchalism from a gendered informed analysis. Next is then this visual ideological imagination. So they can use the images generated by AI, and in groups they can create and visualize this rendering of their own translations, and they can see how these visual representations either reinforce or subvert the traditional gender ideologies. On the left, you see the traditional reading where both subjects are hiding, and on the right, you see the possibility within the text where Adam is the only one hiding behind Eve, and Eve is in front of this royal figure in this case. And finally, is the role of the instructor, where the AI compiles a brief report summarizing the translation patterns that AI can find in what the students are doing. And then the instructor facilitates a closing discussion connecting linguistic, ideological, and ethical insights, including how gender assumptions shape interpretation, use examples from art history to see what are the trends and what are the emphases, and compare them with the students led AI image generation. In this case, the first two images are images from art history. So you can see how it seems that Adam is the one that either is talking to God, in the image in the middle, or is blaming Eve for what's happening in the garden. And the other two images on the right are generated by AI. So in this way, all this exercise completes the reflection and the steps in SRL and consolidates as well learning. One of the ethical issues here is the academic integrity. If AI is introduced too early, students might be tempted to bypass the hard work of syntactical and grammatical analysis, undermining the learning objectives of the course. So, to address these, clear expectations must be set. AI is used only after independent and collaborative translation work is complete. Transparency is also important. Students should know that what the AI is doing, what data it may draw from, and how its output differs from traditional translations like NRSV and JPS. Framing AI then as a conversation partner rather than an authority helps prevent over reliance and supports fairness, ensuring that all students engage in the same intellectual struggle before benefiting from AI's additional output. And finally, the evaluation critical analysis. In terms of SAMR, this redesign moves beyond substitution into modification because AI fundamentally changes how students engage with the text by offering new modes of interpretation, the combination of visual and textual that were not previously available when I designed this exercise. So, if expanded into follow up projects such as producing a student centered podcast or digital commentary that integrates translation, visual analysis, and theological reflection, the assignment could reach the level of redefinition through TPAC. The redesign balances the three domains. In terms of content, it uses Hebrew syntax, textual ambiguity, and theological traditions. In terms of pedagogy, there is a guided translation, there is peer comparison and critical discussion. And in terms of the technology, AI tools that amplify analysis and expand interpretative perspective. So technology is intentionally sequenced to support rather than replace learning, entering only after students' independent and collaborative work is complete.